Welcome to the show. On June 22nd, I had the privilege of being a guest on the John Dowling Show to discuss some fascinating aspects of the truth about the income tax. One topic we discussed is who is really required to withhold income tax. I say who is really required because it is not at all what the societal narrative would have you believe. Another subject we tackled is how and why every financial institution in America, including crypto exchanges, are requiring their customers to commit perjury as a condition of opening an account. Phrased another way, financial institutions across America are demanding that you declare, under penalty of perjury, as true something that is materially false. Furthermore, after being told by a prospective customer that what the institutions are demanding is an act of perjury, their response is to threaten not to open the account unless the prospective customer agrees to commit perjury. In other words, financial institutions across the nation are committing a felony called subornation of perjury. What will really shock you is why they are compelling customers to commit perjury as a condition of opening an account. Perhaps unsurprisingly, the progenitor of these felonies is the United States government. And again, it will likely shock you to hear why the government wants every American to swear that a certain thing is true when in fact it is 100% false. Some people are terrified to learn the truth about the income tax. Others find the truth exhilarating. If you're the kind of person who thrives on truth, you will absolutely love my book, Income Tax Shattering the Myths. Right now, and for a limited time, I'm offering free shipping on anything you order from my Dr. Reality website, as long as Income Tax Shattering the Myths is in the order. To get free shipping, make sure Income Tax Shattering the Myths is in your cart and use the coupon code TARIFS at checkout. Now, on to the main event.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the podcast. We have once back again for a reprise, Mr. Dave Champion, the one and only, who's joining us on this segment having to do with a very popular and important subject, vis-a-vis income taxes, how to avoid them legally and lawfully, and be able to get yourself out of the old IRS system as well as the federal system. And if you are new to the podcast, please do like, subscribe, and share as it helps the channel grow and others to gain in the knowledge you're being currently afforded. As you'll recall, Dave is a multifaceted gentleman. He is an Army Ranger. He's a expert marksman. He worked in law enforcement for several years. And he also is expertly adept at martial arts as well. And he had a great book that we had last time, Body Science. We initially worked with him last year in our archive section. You can go back and check on common law trusts and all the nuances within. And he's discussed this before, but he felt that there was some new information that has come to light that he felt pressing on his heart to discuss with you today in regards to some new things with respect to income tax. Very timely with the big, beautiful bill that is coming to fruition through the administration shortly. And we are honored to have once again, Mr. Dave Champion. How are you today, good sir?
I am awesome, John. How are you doing?
I'm well. Thanks for being here and thanks for your time and expertise.
Thanks for having me back again.
Oh, it's always a pleasure.
Always fun.
Absolutely. Very informative from your end. So Dave, to start things off, correct me if I'm wrong, I understand that after about 32 years of reading U.S. income tax law, you had a bit of a revelation about a particular aspect of it. Can you talk a little bit about that, please?
Absolutely. So first of all, I need to give your audience an overview. I'm going to do this super quick, and then we'll get into the statutes, okay? So for the audience's perspective, there are only two classes of persons. Class of person is just a legal phrase, which means a category that can include a human and also an entity like a corporation. So class of person just means a category that can include those. And the category is defined by certain elements. So that's called class of person in law. So the U.S. income tax law imposes income tax on just two classes of persons. The first one is a non-resident alien with U.S. source income. The second is a foreign corporation with U.S. source income. So for today, we're going to distill those two together, just like the Secretary of the Treasury does in his Treasury decisions, and we're going to call them foreign persons, okay? So 1 and 2 are going to be under this one phrase, foreign persons. So However, there is a third class upon whom the tax has not been imposed, but who has been made liable to collect and pay the tax. And that is a U.S. citizen, U.S. resident, or domestic corporation known in tax law as a U.S. person. And that's the person involved in the flow, excuse me, in the flow of U.S. source income to its foreign owner. Okay. So somebody's in that pipeline. They're a U.S. citizen, U.S. resident, or domestic corporation. They have to, before they pay the money to the foreign guy offshore, they have to withhold the tax. And then once they withhold it, of course, they have to file a return and pay it over to the government. Okay. So what I just said, that probably took about, what, a minute? That is the A to Z of income tax law. The thousands of pages of regulations, of statutes, and treasury decisions, they all rotate, they all administrate those three factors and nothing more. That's the important part. Okay. So today we're going to focus on the withholding part. So it's withhold and pay over, but we're going to ignore the pay over part today. This is so U.S. persons, they withhold the tax. All right. So having your audience understand that's the limited focus for this moment. Okay. Go ahead and bring up the graphic that we were looking at a bit earlier.
Certainly. Let me just get that going here. This may take a minute. Okay.
All right. I'm going to put my computer glasses on so I'm not blind. All right.
Right.
So I want the audience to take note that 3406 is entitled Backup Withholding. So, John, if you could scroll up a little bit on that and click on where it says Subtitle C in blue.
Okay.
Beautiful. Okay. So the point I want to make to your audience here is that Subtitle C, entitled Employment Taxes, has one thing in common. Every single thing listed there is commanding or instructing an entity that is under the exclusive legislative jurisdiction of Congress to do this and such. And we'll talk about that in a minute. So what does it mean to be under the exclusive legislative jurisdiction of Congress? Well, that's Washington, D.C., the possessions, the territories, any other federal places, and of course, government entities within the federal government or the governments of the possessions and territories. So what you're seeing here in chapters 21 through 24, we don't need to pay attention to 25, just general provisions. 21 through 24 are instructions to these various government entities. That is the totality of Subtitle C. Subtitle C does not address anything other than Congress's instructions to various government entities. Now, with that said, let's run down this list real quickly. Federal Insurance Contribution Act, FICA. Everybody's probably familiar with that. They see FICA taken out of their paychecks. That is, I've got a video on that. You can go to my Rumble page and you'll see that the FICA is actually what people call Social Security tax. And you'll see that the Social Security Act, including its taxes, are all territorial in nature and have no applicability within the 50 states. Okay. The next one, Railroad Retirement Act. Most Americans are unaware that because of the origins of the railroad, they were almost exclusively built on federal lands, and the United States government was major shareholders with the early railroad companies. To this very day, in American jurisprudence, the railroads are considered to be under the exclusive legislative jurisdiction of Congress. FUTA, federal unemployment tax, that's really just a subset of Social Security, which I just shared with you, is only applicable in the possessions and territories. It is not applicable in the states of the Union, no matter what people may have led you to believe over the years. Railroad, again, there we go, under the exclusive legislative jurisdiction of Congress. So go ahead and click chapter 24 again for me, if you'd be so kind, John.
Sure.
All right, so here we are again. And these are, this is the chapter. If you were to ask an accountant, where is the authority to engage in wage withholding from a paycheck? This is the place they would take you. Now, again, I want to be clear. These are instructions from Congress to various government entities under the exclusive legislative jurisdiction of Congress and have absolutely nothing to do with the private sector. So you'll see 3406 is entitled Backup Withholding. So that has always seemed odd to me that it was out of place because this particular section is income tax. You'll see that in the subtitle up there, chapter 24, collection of income tax at source on wages. Okay. But backup withholding is not part of wage withholding. So why did NARA, the attorneys at NARA, stick backup withholding within subtitle C that is exclusively instructions to various government entities? Well, they stuck it there because that's exactly what it is. Now, the important thing about backup withholding is that it is merely a subset of the broader withholding. So here we see it when they're talking about wages. So, John, if you can click where it says Title 26 at the very top in blue. And then if you would scroll down and click on subtitle A, top one, and then click on chapter 3 for me. Okay, fantastic. So remember I said backup withholding is merely a subset of withholding. So there's only two kinds of withholding. If you read the Treasury decisions written by the Secretary of the Treasury, who is the highest executive branch authority over taxation in the entire nation, he talks about that there are only two forms of withholding of the income tax. One is Chapter 24 withholding, which we just looked at a moment ago, and that's wage withholding. The other form of withholding U.S. income tax is Chapter 3, which is what we're looking at now. And the title of that is Withholding of Tax on Non-Resident Aliens and Foreign Corporations. So backup withholding is merely a subset of this withholding. So let me explain the particulars of backup withholding. Well, let me start with the particulars of this kind of withholding. When a person somebody being paid, provides the person making the payment with a Form W-8 or a Form W-9, which mean very different things, that controls how the payment of U.S. source income to non-resident aliens and foreign corporations is treated. So that is that's a 3-second description of the large issue of this Chapter 3 withholding of tax on non-resident aliens and foreign corporations. So backup withholding is a subset of this. And let me explain backup withholding. Backup withholding, if the person being paid refuses to submit a W-8 or a W-9 or any of these other statements that declare status, in that event, when the person receiving payment refuses to furnish those documents, then backup withholding is to be done. And it's generally, there are exceptions for tax treaties and so forth, but generally it's 24%. Okay? So what happens is the person making the payment of U.S. source income to the non-resident alien or foreign corporation, if he is not provided with the necessary status documentation, the default position is, well, if we're not going to get any paperwork from you, then we have to withhold 24%. So that's backup withholding. But backup withholding, as I said, is a subset of what we're looking at right now, which is Chapter 3. So follow me. If the command to backup withhold is within subtitle C, which deals exclusively with Congress's instructions to various entities under the exclusive legislative jurisdiction of Congress, if the subset of backup withholding is only for the government, then Chapter 3 withholding would also be for the government. Now, with that said, there is the issue of what do you know? So we're in this very strange place in America right now where all the industries, the banking industries, we're going to talk about that, I believe, in a few minutes, the real estate industry, what they're all doing is they're taking the perspective that everybody is a non-resident alien or a foreign corporation until they say otherwise, until they testify, until they swear on a document that they're not. A friend of mine is a real estate agent, a very successful real estate agent, and he went to, what do they call that? They have to go to the annual training so they can keep their license current. I forget the name for that.
Yeah.
And so there was somebody there speaking from one of the largest real estate firms in America. And somebody said, why do we make customers sign this FACTA form? And that's where the person has to sign that they're not a foreign entity. Okay? And this guy, again, from one of the largest real estate firms in the country, said that came to be for us, for our industry, because the federal government told us that everybody is to be treated as an alien until they attest otherwise. How insane is that in America?
Crazy.
That in order to, from the government's perspective, in order to properly administrate the income tax, they have to presume that everybody is a foreign person or acting as the agent of a foreign person, which we're going to get into in a minute, rather than their true status. John, did I describe that clearly, do you think?
I think so.
Okay.
I think it makes sense.
All right. Do you have a question at this point?
No, I was looking it up, and I think it's DRE, the DRE seminar that you have to go to. I think here in California, it's every 4 years. Your license has to be renewed. I don't know what it is with your friends, but that's the event I think you're referring to which you're referring.
I think generically they call it continuing education.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That sounds about right. But either way, so Dave, let's stay on this for a moment. Thank you for the articulation, by the way. So with this new understanding that backup withholding is only mandated for entities, if I heard you correctly, under the exclusive legislational jurisdiction of Congress, are there broader implications that would flow from that?
Absolutely. And we've touched upon some of those today. That then the broader context of Chapter 3 withholding, which we're looking at on screen right now, that if backup withholding is Congress instructing entities under the exclusive legislative jurisdiction of Congress to do that, then this full-throated withholding, as opposed to just backup, this full-throated withholding has to be the same kind of instruction. Now, with that said, the Income Tax Act back in 1913 was passed as part of a tariffs act. And I've always expressed to people that because it's a cross-border tax, it's a tax on foreigners deriving U.S. source income, and then the payment of the money, the U.S. income tax has to be collected before the U.S. source income crosses the border and leaves the country and goes to its foreign owner. I've always expressed it as it is not identical to a tariff, but it's much like a tariff. And it certainly is an international financial matter. The income tax, while the public thinks it pertains to them and themselves and their workers and their company, that's not what it applies to at all. It is an international tax. So the States of the Union granted in the Constitution to the federal government the ability to regulate foreign commerce. And the government has the ability, again, in the Constitution, to impose an excise tax. So what the government did is in 1913, it took its right to regulate foreign commerce and its right to impose an excise and merged them together and created what we today call the income tax. And then they spent, the last 112 years misleading the American people about what the income tax really is. I should probably say, for people who've not heard me speak before and they're guffawing at this and they're thinking, oh, this is just insane. This guy doesn't know what he's talking about. I encourage them to read my book, Income Tax Shattering the Myths. It's been out for 15 years, and pretty much everybody who reads it closes the final page and says, holy cow, Champion was right. I didn't know. I bought into the false government narrative. So that's a resource that will give you all of the details beyond the little bit we're touching upon today. So one of the big implications is that this is primarily instructions to the federal government. However, what if somebody comes and wants to invest in your business and the person says to you, I am Russian. I'm the Russian. So I am bringing my Russian money and I'm investing it in your American company, and I want to see some profits from your American company. I sound more like an Indian than a Russian. I suck at accents. Okay. So in that case, because the government does have the authority to impose a regulatory scheme on U.S. sourcing, which we call income tax, on U.S. source income belonging to a foreign person, as would be the example that I just gave. If the person tells you that, well, then yeah, you have to act as a U.S. withholding agent. You have to withhold the tax before the money goes offshore to the foreign guy. And then you have to file a return and pay that money over to the United States government. Now, the fascinating thing is when I say after you withhold the money, you would have to pay the tax and paid over to the government, people be like, well, what tax return should I use? I think people should know that in the 112-year history of the income tax, there are 11 Treasury decisions in which the Secretary of the Treasury says Form 1040 is to be used by a non-resident alien or the non-resident alien's domestic agent, which you would be in the scenario I just described. Now, by the way, I should say there are no Treasury decisions that say anything other than that. That's the important part. So that's the sole direction for a 1040 from the Secretary of the Treasury. Now, over the years, to try and make that less discernible, they've now created more versions of 1040, but the basic framework remains the same. The 1040 and all of its variants back then and the new variants that have come out over the last several decades, all of that is contained within the topic or the subject matter of U.S. source income belonging to non-resident aliens or foreign corporations. That is the purpose of the 1040, no matter what letters appear after those numerals.
Gotcha. Thank you for that, Dave. Appreciate it. Did you want to stay on this page, or do you feel like you satisfied the majority of what you wanted to share?
I think we're good on this. I think we can go.
Okay. I just want to make sure before I switch off here. So let's touch base or redress kind of what you touched on initially in your thesis with regards to you're talking about the banking industry. So let's touch on that. I know you recently did a video, or I understand you did a video about how crypto exchanges are. You know, we've got a lot going on with respect to, as I said earlier, the big, beautiful bill. ISO 20022 takes effect July 14th, which is less than 3 weeks from the time of this broadcast. We've got SEC and XRP or Ripple. We know that thing is being scripted, but that's coming into focus. The timing of this is perfect, Dave, because of, I think, the training that it's going to help for people with these inherent events happening. So with all that being said, you know, how crypto exchanges are on behalf of the government attempting to trap Americans with that legal presumption that their crypto gains are subject to an income tax. Can you explain what they're trying to do?
Oh, yes, that's a great question. All right. So most Americans are completely ignorant of the fact that when they open an account in a financial institution, such as a bank, such as a stock trading account, forex trade, whatever. I'm using financial institutions broadly here. Whenever they open an account, that's in quotes, the institution demands, not asks, demands that they sign a Form W-9. So what is the legal meaning and purpose of a Form W-9? And this goes back to what we were just talking about with all this withholding and everything. Okay? A Form W-9 in law is the signer testifying under penalty of perjury that he, she, it is the money they are receiving, or that is, in the case of a financial institution, this flowing into the account, does not belong to the person who's signing the W-9 and opening the account, but belongs to the foreign person for whom the signer is acting as the domestic agent. Okay, the withholding agent, the U.S. person. There's all these terms that describe the same guy doing the same thing. Okay, so imagine this. Imagine somebody just goes to B of A and says, "Hey, man, I just moved into town. I want to open a checking account." And the guy's like, "Yeah, I'm going to have auto deposit from the company I work for. They're going to put the money in there, and I'm going to pay my bills." And the bank says, "Here, man, sign this." The guy goes, "Oh, W-9, I don't know what that is." Okay. And signs it. What he just testified to under penalty of perjury is every penny in that account does not belong to him, but belongs to the foreign person for whom he's acting as the domestic agent, that he opened that account for that purpose. Now, bringing it back to crypto. When crypto first started to become a thing, most of the exchanges were like the Wild West. There was not a lot of regulation. So that's changed. Here, as we're talking in 2025, virtually all of the exchanges now are doing this exact same thing. They are demanding when you open a crypto trading account that you commit perjury. And I think that's the really important thing. So if somebody is opening a crypto account and that it's such that they can actually get somebody on the phone, which normally is not the case because everything these days, right?
Yeah.
But let's say
Yeah.
they can get somebody from the exchange on the phone, and they say, "Hey guys, really looking forward to trading on your exchange, loving it. But there's a problem here in the sign up process that you're requesting me to fill out a form W-9, and that's not applicable to me." Well, what do you mean it's not applicable to you? Well, the sole legal purpose, as specified by the Secretary of the Treasury, so the W-9 is a withholding certificate only to be given to a withholding agent. And it means that I am a U.S. citizen, U.S. resident, or domestic corporation that is receiving from you, the exchange, U.S. source income that belongs to the foreign guy I'm representing. But as I open this account with you, sir, I'm not representing any foreign guy. It's just me.
Yeah.
So what you're asked, this form requires me to sign it under penalty of perjury. And so I would be committing perjury to say that I'm doing this on behalf of the foreign guy I represent when that's not factual. So how do we get this account open on the exchange without me having to do that? And the person on the other end of the phone will say, "That's not how it works. You either sign the W-9 or we don't open the account." What? So what this means is, and I think this is really important for your audience to take stock of, every bank account, we'll call it checking account, every savings account, every 401k, every IWA, every stock trading account, every Forex account, every crypto exchange account, every single one of them requires you to commit perjury to open an account. And I think more importantly, commits the felony of suborning perjury by demanding that you commit perjury as a condition of opening the account. Okay. Yeah, because the act of suborning perjury is when you pressure somebody after they've informed you this would be perjurious, you pressure them into doing it anyway. That's suborning perjury. That is a felony in every state of the union and in the federal government. Yet, every single financial institution in America suborns perjury and demands that the American people commit perjury as a condition of opening an account.
Dave, if that's not extortion and entrapment, I don't know what is.
Exactly. And let me explain the consequences of this. Okay.
Please.
So sometimes people get in trouble with the IRS because they don't know anything about tax law, right? So if it push comes to shove and it goes on long enough, sometimes the IRS will levy their bank account. Okay. So the American may know his constitutionally protected rights. So he rushes to federal court And he says, Your Honor, here's my petition. Stop the IRS from doing that because you can't seize my property in America without a pre-seizure judicial hearing. And the government comes in and says, Here's our motion to dismiss, Your Honor. And the judge says, Case dismissed. And the guy says, and everybody watching the case says, oh my God, the courts are in on it. Everybody's corrupt. This is the whole system. Because you can't seize property without a judicial. Okay. The reason it gets dismissed is because the American is saying the IRS is about to seize my property. And the W-9 that was signed by the account holder when he or she opened the account testifies that not a penny of the money in that account belongs to the account holder, but belongs to the foreign guy for whom the account holder is acting as the domestic agent. So the legal reality is the government didn't seize a penny of the account holder's money. Every penny they seized was the foreign guy's money. So the petition that the American filed with the court, stop the government. They're trying to do a seizure without pre-seizure judicial hearing. The court and the government are snickering. They're like, dude, they don't even know what the hell's going on here. Okay, so case dismissed. Your facts are in error, and the law that you're presenting is in error. Case dismissed. And it's not it's not the judge's job to teach the petitioner the law. Like, right. Hey, dude, you got this totally wrong. It's the public's responsibility to know the law. And of course, as you well know, John, 99 plus percent of the American public is remiss in that responsibility. They completely shirk it. They don't know anything about the law, such as I'm sure many people are stunned with what they're hearing today because they've never looked at the law. And where would they find it? Other than perhaps my Rumble channel or Income Tax Shattering the Myths or here on your show, where would they hear it?
Yeah, I mean, you'd have to really know where to look to do it, and it's it's kind of you and I, when we were prepping for this podcast, we talked a little bit offline about with respect to the W-9 and encapsulating that discussion. It's in a very simple syntax is don't ask, don't tell. It's kind of one of those
exactly. Yes.
So,
yeah, and that gets back to whether the ordinary American would be required to deduct and withhold the income tax and pay it over to the government. If the guy who comes and invests doesn't tell you he's a foreigner, there's no obligation on you to ask them. Yeah.
Yeah. So the rules can go both ways. They can use it against us, but we can also counter it with them as well, is what I'm hearing you say. So there's some encouragement there.
Correct.
And Correct. I'm going to follow up a little bit on the crypto side with respect to capital gains towards the end, as I have a couple other questions I want to address that tie in nicely to your narrative. If you're able to share it, you were telling me offline this weekend about a very interesting story concerning you don't have to use names or anything like that, but a former prominent tax attorney in New York City, and that you were able to go toe to toe with this person and even educate them on some of the notions that they had concerning client advisement on various filings. If you're able to share, can you touch on that story a little bit?
Sure. This took place many years ago, and my client was the CEO of a startup. The startup was being funded by three of the wealthiest men in America, and the CEO knew that a Form W-4 is only to be signed by a non-resident alien receiving U.S. source income in the form of wages. So when he was presented with a W-4, he said that form isn't for me. Well, this shocked the three investors, three of the wealthiest men in America, that their guy, who they had handpicked to be the CEO, was saying, I'm not going to sign that. It's not for me. So instead of getting into a fight with their CEO, they said, well, let's do a conference call. And so on the call was me, my client, the business manager for the three men. Okay. There was a couple of attorneys that worked for the three guys, but then they had paid specifically the woman who had the reputation as the top tax attorney in New York City to participate in the call. And I think it's fair to say that somebody who's considered the top tax attorney in New York City would also be considered one of the top tax attorneys in the country. So here we are all on the call, and the call begins. We go back and forth a little bit, and the couple of just attorneys, they're not tax attorneys, they weren't specialists, they bowed out pretty quickly. They realized they were way, way in over their head. So then it ended up that it was me and the tax attorney talking back and forth. She had no idea what the hell she was talking about. And I don't say that to pat myself on the back. She had never read most of the laws that we were talking about. He would say, well, the law requires this. And I would say, it does. Really? Can you give me that section number? Well, I don't know that. And I would say, well, the lucky thing is I do. So let's go there. And we would go there. And I would say, let's read this together. And I would read this. And I'm like, how on any world in the universe does this apply to my client, the CEO, right? And then she would say, well, the principle of law is this. And I said, no, that's not what the Supreme Court has said. The Supreme Court has said just the opposite. And I would read her from the Supreme Court what it said. And this went on for probably about 20, 25 minutes with her, she and I back and forth. Excuse my language, she got her ass handed to it. And the business manager for these three gentlemen went back to them and said, much to his surprise, that I had cleaned her clock, and it appeared that the CEO was right. He wasn't required to sign a W-4. But I think the important part of that story is most Americans believe that attorneys know the law. I'm here to tell you, after 32 years in this space, there are a few people who know less about the law than attorneys. They are great court proceduralists in many cases. But as far as like, what does it say in this section? What are the words? Like, I don't know. I've never read it, which is shocking in my book, right? And so, So because I think a lot of people, when they hear me speak, John, their point of view is a couple of things. If this was true, my accountant would know it. If this were true, my attorney would know it. If this was true, the media would be telling me. Okay, the same people who say they don't trust a word out of the media's mouth will look me in the eye and say, if that was true, the media would be telling us. And again, in 32 years, and this is not an exaggeration, what I'm about to say is literal. In 32 years, I have never met an attorney with whom I engaged in a discussion about tax law who had ever read the law. Not one in 32 years. So if people think I'm out of my mind because attorneys would know, how would they know if they don't read the law?
Well, absolutely, David. And I can tell you, like, as a former law enforcement officer, as a former military man, and now in this capacity, it all comes down to training, right? Where did they get the training? You are a protector, policy enforcer for the state as an officer. You swore an oath to protect. Well, I'm just saying, in parlance, when you were serving the military in the country, and again, we thank you for your service supremely. You swore an oath to protect, the people constitutionally and whatnot. And so, similarly, attorneys are, I'm trying to find a nice word for it.
Spit it out, John.
Well, yeah, I know. I'm trying to be diplomatic here, but they're basically slaves to the foreign corporation, right? And to the British American Registry that acts as a liaison, quote unquote, to America. So accountants, they're accountable to the corporation. So they're only as good as their training. And basically, ostensibly, they're trained, know this, don't worry about this other stuff. Nothing to see here is what I was getting at.
And let me validate that point.
Please.
I live about an hour outside of Las Vegas, and UNLV has an accounting program. If UNLV hired me to lecture to the students in the accounting program, that would probably last 2 or 3 weeks before a government entity reached out to them and said, if this continues, we're going to pull your accreditation for your accounting program. That's how they control this.
Yeah.
Any of these institutions where you're saying where they get trained, if if they wanted to train them in the truth, they'd lose their accreditation.
Yeah. The word I was trying to find, I'm sorry, was Esquire, which
Yes,
just
yes,
is the
yes.
guise
Yeah.
of British, it's the illusion of serving we the people, but it's really serving the corporation. That's, double meaning.
Many attorneys still sign their letter like Bob Smith, comma Esquire.
Yeah, they do because
Yeah.
they've been trained to do so, to your point.
Yeah.
Couple other key questions, Dave, with the time that we have that's precious here. Reading your book, Income Tax, Shattering the Myth, there was a you had mentioned in there about utilizing your techniques and practices, and those who have purchased the book thus far and those who will, because you were talking about before that they came with a precept that you were wrong, and then they wanted to read the book to either, confirm that you were wrong or be shattering the myth that they thought they knew. That ipso facto, by reading the book and studying it copiously, you have claimed that you have virtually 100% success rate as a result. To what do you attribute such a high success rate?
It's been a long time coming. Let me say that. I've been at this 32 years. But it comes down to, first of all, understanding the law. That's number one. Then you have to be able to articulate the law clearly. And then it is the right of due process. Now, of course, we've heard more in the last 3 months about due process, when we look at the headlines, than we probably heard in our entire lifetimes up until the last 3 months, right? But due process is crucial to this subject because every single thing the government does concerning income tax is based on presumptions. Okay. So for instance, at the bank, we use that example when they say, well, sorry, if you don't sign the W-9, we can't open the account. So the person signs the W-9. Right then and there, at that instant, they created a legal presumption upon which the IRS will operate and does operate, that they are acting as the domestic agent for a foreign person. Okay. When a person say works for, I'm not trying to be critical of GM, I'm just using them because it popped up in my head. If somebody signs a W-4 at GM, okay, they just certified under penalty of perjury that they are a non-resident alien receiving U.S. source income in the form of wages. Okay. And then GM sends in a W-2 every January against that person. And the W-2 tells the IRS, hey, this guy signed a W-4. So he said under penalty of perjury, he's a U.S. person. I'm sorry, he's receiving U.S. source income in the form of wages as a non-resident alien. And then we go back to the 1040. Who's to sign the 1040? Non-resident alien. So all of this actually flows perfectly. Sign the W-4 where you attest under penalty of perjury that you're a non-resident alien. The W-2 tells the IRS that you did that. Then the IRS demands your 1040, which is to be used by non-resident aliens. And on the W-9 side, right, when you sign a W-9 declaring this isn't my money, it's the foreign guy's money for whom I'm acting as the agent, then you get a 1099 that tells the IRS that you certified under penalty of perjury it's not your money, the foreign guys. Then the IRS says, where's our money? Where's the return? And remember, those 11 Treasury decisions, 1040s to be used by non-resident alien with U.S. source income or the domestic agent, who's also the withholding agent. Okay. So it all just flows perfectly once you know what you're looking at. But of course, Americans think the 1040 is for them. They have no idea. It has nothing to do with them.
Right. Well, again, Dave, we go back to what we talked about before, entrapment. They basically entrapped you to do business with the corporation, the foreign corporation, and to do contracted business, right?
Yes.
And it's supposed to do it without prejudice, but
it is literally so easy to destroy the IRS's presumptions using due process. And I get that the average Joe is saying, wait, it's so easy against the IRS. Yeah. When you know what the law says, you know how to.
Yeah.
What's that?
Once you understand it, once you know how to hack it. And
sure,
when you go ahead, I'm sorry.
It's like knowing a safe combination, right? So in the movies, the guy's always got his ear up against that and he's spinning the thing. Well, once you know what the combination is, you don't have to crack the safe a second time. From then on out, you just enter the combination. So that's analogous to working your way through until you know enough to just laugh and use due process, and they go away for the rest of your life.
Yeah, it's kind of like what we did last month with body science. Once you know how to hack your genetic code of eating, you can crack this of how to, have protein gain and weight loss and work your body symmetrically in the right way. This is the same thing financially speaking. And I see presumption. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say, and looking at you here today, you've obviously leaned out.
Yeah, I have. It feels good.
You are leaner than when I first met you.
Oh yeah, and thank you. I appreciate you saying that, because I took your book to the letter, and really, it took me about, like you said, 3-ish months to kind of get it, in the pocket. But once you figure it out, it starts to do its own thing. When you said presumption, I always think assumption. To me, they kind of go hand in hand.
They do, yeah.
Presumptive, assumptive.
Yeah. I think I should look up the difference between presumption and assumption. I don't know if I've ever done that.
Yeah, it seems like they're close cousins, but just saying. Last question for the day, Dave, and this goes back to what I promised about talking about with cryptos. I wanted to wait to tie it into the end, so just bear with me a moment. There's a lot going on with this new administration that we're pretty encouraged about, with initiatives, particularly with the IRS, the discussion of ERS and collecting tariffs to take that away from the people and all of that. But what was interesting to me is, you probably already know this, but we're seeing a decoupling of the states away from the Fed, DC specifically. For example, Governor Abbott of Texas, a couple of weeks ago, I don't know if you're aware, signed a bill into law that is going to allow them to remove capital gains. That has specific implications with respect to foreign currencies and cryptos. So it'll be interesting to see if a lot of states adopt that. And again, for example, interesting little factoid I learned from one of our team members is Texas and Tennessee have a very close symbiotic relationship in business, in that since 1801, they have been accepting gold and silver as a legal form of payment. And so as Texas goes, Tennessee tends to follow. So it'll be interesting to see, in particular, the red states, if they follow this pattern. So I ask you, with respect to cryptos in this new discovery of capital gains removal by Texas and hopefully other states, which I believe will happen, how does that effectuate the banking system in your mind to allow Americans to get a loophole around what they're trying to do?
So I'm going to use real estate as an example, but this applies 100% to crypto. Okay. So a guy goes out and he buys a property for $400,000. He sits on it for a couple of years and it doubles in value. So he decides he wants to profit take. So he sells that property. If he's like 99% of the public who doesn't know a thing about tax law, he goes to his accountant and he says, okay, so I have $400,000 in capital gains. So I guess I have to pay capital gains tax. And the accountant goes, you sure do, buddy. Okay. Now, myself, readers of Income Tax Shattering the Myths, people who know the truth about the income tax, here's how it works for them. They go out and they buy a property for $400,000. It doubles in value. They decide they profit take. They sell the property for $800,000 and they have $800,000. Not a penny of capital gains, because capital gains only applies to U.S. source income belonging to foreign persons. It has nothing to do with you or me. The income tax has nothing to do with you or me. And of course, capital gains tax is a part of Subtitle A in what people call income tax. Okay. There's nothing in Subtitle A, including capital gains, that has anything to do with ordinary Americans in America earning their own money. Okay. So, in my case, I would have $400,000 in original investment capital back, and I would have $400,000 in profit because I made a wise investment. Okay. I would have zero capital gains. Now to crypto, same exact thing. People who bought Bitcoin way back in the day, right? What's a single Bitcoin worth now?
Let's take a look.
I don't know.
100. Let me take a look real quick. I'll be able to tell you on one of my apps. As of this moment, just about 105,500.
Okay. So what did the person pay originally, like back in the first day, just as an example, what did the person pay for a Bitcoin back on day one?
I think when you got in it, anywhere from pennies to up to $40.
Okay. So, and you said it's basically $100,000 now.
105 and a half thousand.
Okay. So let's say for the sake of this discussion that he paid $1. Okay.
Right.
So that Bitcoin now is, to people who don't understand tax law, they would imagine he has $105,000 in capital gains minus $1 for his initial investment. That's how they would see it. In reality, they have $105,000 of gain that is their personal property and not subject to income tax at all. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then we come back around to the W-9, where the exchange tricked the person into declaring that that $105,000 isn't really theirs. It belongs to the foreign person for whom the account holder is acting as a domestic agent. And then the IRS comes calling and says, "Where's our money, buddy?" Dave at drreality.news. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I was about to get to that actually, so you segued well. Other than the fact that I like you and like working with you, and you have brilliant ideologies that are time tested and proven in all these areas. Otherwise, you wouldn't do it or put your name on it. As you said, 32 years is pretty lengthy resume. The timing couldn't be more serendipitous with these financial changes that are happening in our country and throughout the whole of the world. So the timing is, ideal. It's one of the things I love to do as an artist is timing. So that's why I felt like this was the perfect time to wait a month and, have these things kind of ginned up front of scene. So you're helping a lot of people with respect to taking advantage of their real rights against what I'm going to call a foreign corporation in the IRS. And also with respect to cryptos and other investments, it really empowers them at a critical time was my point. So, Dave, as we wrap things up, you kind of segued into it. If people want to hire you for consulting for this, or they want to get the book, can you kind of tell people how they get advisement on that?
They can grab the book at the website, which is Dr. Reality, spelled drreality.news, drreality.news. My email address, dave@drreality.news. Simple as that. I try and keep it simple.
Oh,
by the way, I'm still trying to recover from serendipitous.
You like that?
I haven't heard that word in like 30 years.
Well, I mean, some words age well.
John. Yeah, that's awesome. I love a great vocabulary.
Well, we got to do something to bring something to the table for all that you bring, but no, I will leave that link, as we always summarily do, in the description of this video. And I really pray that this empowers people the way I believe it has, and it will. So any final thoughts you have, Dave, for the audience before we part?
No, I think we have done a fabulous job, you and I, today, of getting all this information out to your audience. Thank you for allowing me to do that.
Oh, believe me, it's a privilege. So Dave Champion, thank you for joining the podcast once again. Very timely. We appreciate all of your efforts and hard work, and it's obviously coming back and paying off well for you, and well deserved. Thank you for your service to the country, and we want to wish you preemptively a very safe and happy 4th holiday, and we'll look forward to seeing you again shortly.
Thanks, John. Take care.
Take care.